I grew up watching Muppets movies, and I think one of the greatest charms about the Muppets is that no one addresses the fact that, you know, there are human beings and felt animals walking around and like coexisting, and it's totally normal. And I love that, like, practically this troupe doesn't have a child actor with them, and they're like, well, let's just do a puppet instead. That'd be great. But then just in this world, I love that it's like, oh yep, this is my puppet daughter. And I'm like, okay, my headcanon now is that Celine is just Miss Piggy. Like, just like Tim Curry in Muppet Treasure Island, Rochester went off and boned a felt pig, and then she left him this little girl. It's so cute. Well, hello, Lillian. How are you?
I'm so good, Piper, because spring has sprung.
It's pretty sunny outside. And right now, my little thing says 40 degrees. And maybe to some of you out there, you're like, 40 degrees? That's not warm. Shut up. This is a gift.
This has been rough. Minnesota's winter has been a tough time. I am also certain that if you took all of the snow in my whole town, other than the snow at my house, and you put that in one pile, and then you took the snow that is currently in my yard and you put it in a second pile, my pile would be bigger. There's so much snow left in my yard. It makes me unbelievably sad.
Do you have a lot of shadows cast that prevent the sun from helping you out? I'm sorry.
Yeah, and then I also have a fence, and I live at the bottom of a hill, so all the snow blows into my yard, but then it can't blow out.
Dang, ain't that just the way?
And just in case anybody's wondering, this is what it's like when Midwest friends get together. Are you from Minnesota? Let's talk about the weather, because it's interesting for real.
Fun little side story. So I studied abroad in Sweden, and there was these outings that we would do where all the international kids would get together. And in that case, I was one of them. And so we were all out at this restaurant chatting about stuff. And there was a girl there who was from Canada. And so Minnesota and Canada is almost exactly the same thing. So she and I were like bonding and just talking about all of this stuff. And we were like horrifying some of the other people in our group who are not accustomed to like talking to strangers. They're like, no, if you don't know someone, you don't talk to them. You don't make eye contact with them. You don't say anything to a person you don't know. And we're like, oh, no, you don't understand. We say hi to our neighbors when we go out and we get the mail. We help people everywhere we can go. And I was like, hey, tell them what we do in elevators. And they were like, what do you do in elevators? They're like, we talk about the weather.
So true. One time I was in San Francisco and I saw this guy, and I was like a teenager, young enough that like it wasn't like hitting on him thing. But I like saw this guy, I made eye contact. I'm from Minnesota, so I smiled and did like a little nod thing to him. And he looked at me like he was terrified. Like it was the scariest experience that had ever happened to him. And I'm like, this is normal.
Right. You make eye contact. You do a little like, I acknowledge you. Look.
Yeah. Because we're all human beings at the end of the day.
Exactly.
Anyway, send us what you do in an elevator in an email, or even better, in an iTunes review. 5 stars. What do you do in an elevator?
I'm just realizing that this is now exactly like one of those most recent insurance ads where it's the dude who's like, I can't help you not be like your parents or whatever. And it's just like they're training them in the elevator. That's all Midwesterners and Canadians. So
yeah. It's the best. We truly are this nice. Anyway, Piper, what did we watch today?
We watched a very fun stage production of Jane Eyre that is unique because it brought a bit of comedy to this classic drama of ours. We watched the 2004 Oddsocks production of Jane Eyre. And would you like to give us some more info on Oddsocks and what makes them so special?
So Oddsocks is my new favorite production company because they make theater more approachable is sort of their philosophy by combining classic theater with clowning techniques, which is chef's kiss. So beautiful. Good. And they basically, it's very humorous. They do a lot of Shakespeare, and I definitely felt that watching this. If you've ever watched like a really well done Shakespearean comedy, that this felt like that. Big fan. I have some fun facts about the founders and all that stuff that we'll get into later. But Piper, we need to tell people what Jane Eyre is about, because most people who showed up today were like, I've heard about Jane Eyre. Sounds like a crazy tale. have never read it, have never consumed an adaptation. And I thought the Eyre Oddsocks production was my way to get in. So for those people, how are we going to tell them about it?
We're going to do a rapid fire recap, which we haven't done for a few episodes. And so just for funsies and to fill out an hour, we're going to bring it back.
And we also can't remember who did it last because usually we trade off. So you guys are about to listen to a very high stakes game of rock, paper, scissors.
Yeah.
Are you ready, Piper?
I'm ready. And we're going to go on go, right? 1, 2, 3, go.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Ready? Okay.
One, two, three, go.
I can't see your fingies.
I got them.
I think we did the exact same thing the last time. You did scissors. I did paper. So next time I'm doing rock. I'm just telling her I'm doing rock. I'm throwing her off, everybody.
I don't remember what I did last time. I just sort of pick in the moment. It's the only real strategy.
She did scissors last time. She's a scissors girl. I'm developing a pattern. I know her. All of her talents. Little did you know this was also ASMR. So we are okay. So wait. We didn't decide if who wins is the one doing it or punishing the other.
You have to do it.
Oh, okay.
For sure we did. Doing it's the loser's job. For 100%.
It's not the honor of getting to recap this?
No, it's not.
Okay, are we ready? I'm going to do a nice short one.
Let me get the timer in front of me. Okay.
Okay, so if you don't know anything about Jane Eyre, here's what you need to know. It is about a little girl who's raised by a family who doesn't like her. They send her off to a mean boarding school with a mean man, and she endures, survives sickness, loses a friend, learns how to be a good person, gets hired as a governess, and then goes to a place, and then she takes care of a little girl named Adele, who is my favorite person in this entire production. Then she meets Rochester, the owner of the house. They fall in love. She saves him from a fire. There's weird laughter around the house. And then he's like, ooh, I like this girl, but I can't actually just say that out loud. I need to gaslight her into admitting her feelings. So he brings in a lady to make her jealous. It works. Jane is jealous. And then he decides to marry her after her aunt dies. And right before they can get married, it's revealed that he has a wife already. She's the lady who set his bed on fire and was laughing all the time. So Jane's like, I'm out. Bye. And then she wanders, and then she's found by her cousins. And one of her cousins is a man, and he says, marry me. And she's like, no thanks. And she is an heiress. And then she goes back to Rochester, and he has one eye and one hand, but she loves him anyway. And they're together forever. The end.
Yay! That was just over a minute, which is very good for us.
Woo!
Especially since you hit most of the plot points. I'm very proud of you. It was 1 minute, 1 second and a half.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think one of my first notes, just kind of talking about the overall vibe of this production, is I think they did a wonderful job, and I think the comedy worked really well for me. And I think that says that, similar to how you mentioned that this troupe is used to working with Shakespeare, I think the people who wrote the comedy and wrote the specific way to adapt this play, I think they really understood the source material. So their jokes landed really well, and it wasn't just random stuff. There was, of course, a whole bunch of just random slapstick, but it was smart comedy some of the time too. And I was like, oh, hey, that's good. I like that.
Well, and I think this is meant to be a really family friendly production, which you can for sure read in this. There also was a lot of very regional accent based humor that did go over my head. Sorry to not know the nuances of regional accents in the UK specifically. I'm sure that people would do the same thing with a Midwest accent or a Southern accent. But I felt the exact same way. I felt like watching this, I was like, this is the thing that I was frustrated with when we watched the Second City TV production, where they did that Jane Eyre head thing, is their jokes were all about the premise of the story instead of being about the thing. The story is funny. There are moments in Jane Eyre that are humorous that don't usually make it into adaptions. And then they also played certain examples of things so well that's so funny if you think about it, because for example, just one example of I think a moment like what you're describing is, we've talked a lot about the fact that Rochester will go into these long monologues where he'll say what Jane's face is doing. And he'll say something like, you look very confused by that. And she's doing this really intense comedic face of confusion and sort of disturbed by him. And he'll be like, but you look very good. And it's no, she doesn't.
No, I thought that was great. And like that same scene, I think one of the jokes that I was like, oh, that's a really funny way to do that is when he draws her into the fireside room and he's like, I am predisposed to be communicative and gregarious tonight, Miss Eyre. And then they just sit in silence for like 30 plus seconds. And then she's like, are you though? Like you're not saying anything. He's like, well, you have to talk. And she's like, what? And just the way they played those weird, awkward pauses, I thought was very good.
They had like a ticking clock, and then he like stares at her for a really long time, and he goes, "Do you think I'm handsome?"
No, I thought, they took moments that I don't know. They adapted moments in a way that was wonderful for the genre.
Yeah, very, very funny. Like, and then also very like, it's also this layer of the person who wrote that play, the people who adapted that play, love Jane Eyre.
Yeah,
right.
I got
like,
that sense too.
They love Jane Eyre, the story. They really understand it, and they pulled quotes so well in a way where these actors are also killer. Like these were such good actors because they were able to play the comedy moments, but they also were able to deliver the monologues, like the sincere monologues really well, even when there were other humorous things happening around on stage, but they needed to stay in that sincere moment and the humor was somewhere else. They did such a good job at that. Like it was so impressive.
That was one thing that stood out to me too, is how many direct lines from the novel they did. I feel like most of the dialogue was lifted from the source material, which was really cool to see. So, and to be able to do that and then still have it be funny, which I guess is their entire thing. That's what they do. So.
Yeah. And I also think there's also like I've mentioned earlier, there is humor in Jane Eyre. Like that was one of the things I was really surprised by in reading the book was how funny it was. And I think similarly to like, that's why the Shakespeare correlation makes so much sense to me, is like Shakespeare is hilarious. Like even his tragedies have jokes, and a Shakespearean comedy is like so incredibly funny, but without enough context, you're not going to get that. And so reading a Shakespearean comedy, I don't enjoy nearly as much as like seeing a Shakespearean comedy is such a joyful experience. And this felt like that.
Yeah, absolutely. There is a talent of being able to, give life to those comedic beats, because you're right. Like I'm thinking now specifically about like Shakespeare, for example. The way his writing kind of has like a tempo. And so, you can like read it on the page and not necessarily get how it's funny because it has to be like, it has to be delivered in a certain way with like comedic timing, like you need with jokes and stand up and comedy and all that jazz. So, yeah, but we're not talking about Shakespeare. We're talking about Jane Eyre. So get out of here, Willie.
Okay, fine. I'll tell him to go. Give me a second. No, she's mad. No, she never wants to have famous guests on the show. I don't understand it.
I know. I've put my foot down before, Mr. Shakespeare. You can ghost off.
Just like telling Taylor Swift and Toby Stevens that they can't come on the show.
Yeah, no matter how much they beg.
Also doesn't want the ghost of Shakespeare, even though he showed up. But whatever. He like took the time out of his ghost schedule.
So let's talk about the sets first.
Okay.
Because it has become now, whenever we see a stage production of Jane Eyre, I am so curious to see how they are going to do the sets. And this one, even though the National Theatre production, the beauty of that minimalist design and everything, very cool and artistic, I'm giving the Oddsocks production gets an award for most transformable and imaginative and creative and comedic set. So it was just so cool. They made it look like pages from a book, that they could like turn the pages and it would transform from one room to another. And it was so cool how they did that. And they also incorporated the moving of the set into several jokes. Like there's one moment when, I'm going to talk about this now, but we're talking about it in depth later. Pilot the dog is a stuffed animal. He's brilliant, steals the show, and there's a moment where Rochester is in the library with Pilot laying on the floor, and Jane goes to like leave the room, and she's changing the set, and she's like, "Pilot, move! Pilot, move!" And then like she like it's just some stuffed animal that's laying there, and they have someone doing dog voices off stage,
and it does this little like squeak, like it got squished between the set.
Yeah,
and she gives this face like she accidentally just squished a real dog and then closes the door and like looks at the audience like, oops.
So good. On. So good. Any thoughts about the set and the creativity of it?
I really loved it. I think the Pages thing was clear immediately and was so well done and not overplayed. Like when they were introducing the set, there was a lot of attention drawn to it and there was a lot of laughs around how the set worked, but they did a really good job of like having the humor of that be introduced up top and then letting it fade to the background, because they probably had, so like essentially what they had was walls that they were dragging across the stage that would change the set that they were in. And they had doors in this wall that they would go from one room to the next. And that's how they changed it. I think they had a total of 3 separate spaces. And then they had a couple of pieces that they would move within those to transform it from either a bedroom to a library to outside versus Bertha's attic, and have it all be these 3 different sets. And it was so incredibly paced. And the way that the cast like managed those beats, it was very choreographed. I found it hilarious. They had this way to go upstairs. And the first time they did it, the audience laughed a lot harder than I thought was necessary. But it also was like, if you have kids that you want to introduce to Jane Eyre, this is a decent way to do that too, because it was very clearly for children. I mean, the whole family, but like children enjoyed it. But the walking upstairs, they did that thing. If you've ever done that, walk past a counter and pretend you're going downstairs or upstairs or whatever. But they had a wall that was collapsible that didn't do a great job of collapsing up and down. Like it stuck and it did all these things. And they played the humor of that really well.
That's the thing is I feel like having that mechanism not be very like flexible was part of the joke. I think that was intentional. Sure. Yeah. And it was so good. No, there was several moments, where I think, what's the maid's name? She fell down the stairs at one point.
But they called her like Molly or something.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Or Mary. But yeah. No, they did lots of kind of comical things with that, her falling down the stairs and everything. There's also another thing with that stair that we're going to save for the end because it was amazing in my opinion.
I'm not remembering it, so I'm very excited.
I'll remind you when we get to that. Okay, so the set, amazing. I liked how sometimes certain rooms had like panels within it that would kind of swing open to make like the church. It would turn the Great Hall into the church scene. So it kind of felt like moving tabs in one of those pop-up picture books. Very cool. Just a very smart way of doing that. And I love seeing the creativity. They did the fire effect. I loved because remember when we complained about Utah Musical not knowing how to set a bed on fire, so they just left it off stage. It's like, no, it's literally you take the little tissue paper, you stick it under a fan, and you put a little light there, and it just blows, and it looks like little fire, and it's so good.
Exactly.
Okay, so I feel like talking about the creativity of the set transitions well into the most important thing that we have to discuss, which is we have a Muppet in this show.
She's a puppet is probably the non-branded term for her. But yes, Piper, who's the puppet? Why would they have a puppet in this?
Adele is the puppet. It was the best thing ever. Anytime she was on scene, it stole the whole show and I was obsessed. It also touches a part of my heart that is very near and dear to me. I grew up watching Muppets movies, and I think one of the greatest charms about the Muppets is that no one addresses the fact that, there are human beings and felt animals walking around and coexisting, and it's totally normal. And I love that, practically, this troupe doesn't have a child actor with them, and they're like, well, let's just do a puppet instead. That'd be great. But then just in this world, I love that it's like, oh, yep, this is my puppet daughter. And I'm like, okay, my headcanon now is that Celine is just Miss Piggy. Just like Tim Curry in Muppet Treasure Island, Rochester went off and boned a felt pig, and then she left him this little girl. It's so cute.
That's so funny. Oh my God. I loved the way they played that. I loved the way the actors, they definitely played that Muppet, they're pretending it's not a puppet situation. But I also enjoyed that Adele seemed to have an awareness that she was a puppet, which was really funny to me. And then they also used an actual line from Jane Eyre where Blanche comes in and says, "What a little puppet."
It's so cute. Everything about her. I love that she literally only spoke French. There was like a few lines that she did with English, but mostly she's just a little puppet there going, "Oui, monsieur," and just like talking with her little puppet voice. All the times when they would transition from her sitting, because they had her propped up against a bench, against a wall where there was like a cutout so the puppet's hand, like the puppeteer could reach through and make her move. But like they would otherwise, to take her out of a scene, someone would just kind of scoop her up into their arms and carry her away like she's a sleepy kid. And like, I loved so much when Rochester is explaining the history of his affair with Celine and how he got Adele. And he's like cradling this puppet. And as he's leaving, he opens the door and he's about to go. And he's like, "Mind your head." This little like felt baby is so cute.
So cute.
And
she hands him the puppet and he hands it back like, "No." And she's very insistently gives it to him. The other great moment with the puppet was during they did the full duet that Blanche and Rochester did, except Lady Ingram also joins in beautifully. Like, so funny, so well done. And they're all taking it really seriously. They're all performing their hearts out. And Puppet Adele is losing her damn mind because she's so embarrassed by the whole situation.
Like banging her little head against the wall. It was also, oh my God, when he gives her the present, her cadeau. And like, she's like, the way she's like ruffling inside of the box, I'm like, it's like my cat Minnow when we open presents at Christmas and she's like tearing everything apart.
Incredible.
Oh, such good physical comedy there. Also, okay, so we had the stuffed animal pilot, which I loved. Either was he would like hold it in his arms, Rochester. That was one thing that made him so cute to me, is just him like holding these stuffed animals and these like puppet daughters. I'm like, oh my God, it's so cute. But also there's like scenes where Pilot, the stuffed animal dog, is like devouring a rabbit off stage. And it's like, why is this happening now? But they also had a puppet horse. Like, that's how he gets thrown.
That wasn't a puppet. That was a man in a horse costume.
Right, but like the head up top.
Yes,
like,
for sure. So, because how he rides the horse is getting on that man's back.
Just doing
like a piggyback ride. It's so cute. I could die.
Oh my God. That was so good. And I loved, like, they did a zoom in on the horse face at one point, and I'm like, he has angy eyes.
Because it's like, "Jane, go get the horse." And the horse is like, "You will not."
And he's like, "You're not touching me, little lady."
Actively disinterested. And then he says the line about like, "You can't bring the mountain to Muhammad, so we'll have to bring Muhammad to the mountain." And she thinks the horse is Muhammad.
But then later she thinks he's Mohammed. And I love that during the proposal scene, they bring that joke back because he's like, "Say my name." And she's like, "Mohammed." And he's like, "No, it's Eddie." It's very, very good.
So good.
Oh, I loved all of that. There was some other joke when she was with the Rivers that had to do with some kind of a weird little animal, but they didn't zoom out far enough to see what exactly that was.
Yeah, I'm going to be totally honest about my viewing experience for this one, because we often talk about that. I had a busy week, and I did watch this while I was cleaning my kitchen. So I missed some of the visual humor, a little bit of it. But going back, so love the puppets. I think it's really important that we talk about that up front. Zooming all the way back to Jane's childhood, what did you think about how they did her childhood? Because I know when we watched the National Theater, you were not a fan of an adult playing a child.
Yeah.
Did it feel different this time?
I much preferred this because she didn't go all in with like the baby voice or like even crying like a baby, which I hated from the National Theater production. And I liked just simple visual cues of like, as a girl, she has her hair down in these curls. And then when she becomes a governess, she puts it up in this respectable bun. I think it's a good visual storytelling cue. One thing that I liked, because like we said, they stayed pretty true to a lot of the dialogue and they included most of the major scenes. I liked that once we transitioned briefly to Lowood School, that became sort of like a quick monologue of Jane just simply being like, and I stayed at this awful place for 8 years. Lots of girls died. I didn't. I got a job as a teacher after they booted Brocklehurst out for sucking and killing children. And so, but I've decided I'm over this. And so I'm like, oh, awesome. They're not going to make us sit through all of that humiliation and all that stuff.
Because watching Helen die is not going to be funny.
Right, exactly.
There's a lot of moments that are really serious in Jane Eyre that you can add humor to, and it's still good. Helen's death wasn't going to work that way.
No, it wasn't. So I'm glad they did it that way. They did handle a death scene, though. And this was like one of the only moments where I was like, I think this went a little too far into the slapstick.
It's the only part that I skipped.
Oh, you just skipped it?
Not the whole thing. One particular moment.
When Aunt Reed is like farting to death?
The super long death fart.
Yes. So
I
they did that
skipped forward 20 seconds and it was still going.
Yep. They did. They had Aunt Reed fart herself to death after making jokes about like a chamber pot full of diarrhea. It was like, okay, we don't need all of this stuff.
I truly wish this was an episode we were doing as a video episode, because what you guys aren't seeing is that Piper has a little pencil in her hand.
Waving my pencil around.
And she just, like a teacher, as if she was directing to like notes on a board, went, Aunt Reed farted herself to death.
She farted herself to death. And what is the symbolism of this, children? What are we learning here today?
That when you die, your body like releases, and the first thing you do is shit yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Something they leave out of most of the movies. I wonder why. So yeah. There's a few notes that I have written down here. So I've covered a lot of these, but one thing I have to go back to, because I had this quote that I thought was very funny. When Jane first arrives at Thornfield, and it's one of the times when we see them like moving the set for the first time. So Miss Fairfax, she's pushing the thing and she's going through this doorway at the same time. And she has this line where she looks at the audience and she says, "It's just a stage I'm going through." And it's just like, that's funny. I like it.
So here's the cast thing that I have, since we're talking about her, because she was an incredible actress. She is actually one of the founders. She's the creative producer is her title officially. She is still working there. They founded it in 1989. Her and her husband, so her name is Ellie Mackenzie. That is absolutely her name, and I'm 100% confident about it.
Awesome.
And then her husband's name is Andy Bauer, and I believe he was the man who played Rochester, but I only have like a headshot of him, and then the kind of 2004 we did a quality video to compare it to. I'm pretty sure that's who it is. But she played Aunt Reed, Mrs. Fairfax, one of the sisters.
She
and a
was
bunch of other characters.
Lady Ingram, which the wig for Lady Ingram was wonderful. They had like this, it was this high tower of white hair, and on top was this kind of like cascading ponytail, and like she would wiggle her head around pompously and it would spin the ponytail like a helicopter, propel her above her head. It was very good.
That's so amazing. Yeah, and they're both classically trained actors. Very impressive background. And they choose to do this because why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
And you can just tell that they like, I get the vibe that they love the art of theater, and they love that theater is really supposed to be something that people are welcomed into and enjoy together. And they lean really hard into that. She also played Bertha. Can we talk about her portrayal of Bertha a little bit?
Yeah, so Bertha had a great moment when they first go up there. I like how they would interact with the audience with certain scenes, and this is one of them where Rochester addresses the audience. He's like, "Everyone, you must be quiet. You must be quiet. No sudden moves. You are likely to upset her." And then Bertha is brought out, and she instantly runs into the crowd and like goes up to the camera and makes like a weird face and like scurries off. And the way that Mrs. Poole, is able to like kind of coax her back, and she's like, "Oh, she loves shoes," and she takes a shoe from someone in the audience and uses that as like a distraction toy to bring her back and calm her down.
And then they do a callback to it when Bertha dies. They're like, she was up there. She had her favorite shoe.
It was great. And I never saw them give the shoe back. So hopefully that guy.
Gotta assume. I think it was a child because it had pink laces and looked child-sized.
Maybe.
But that's my headcanon, was that they
Cool.
took a child's shoe.
Yeah, because that kid won't freak out about that. It'll be fine. No.
I would have been the kind of kid where I would have taken off a shoe and offered it to them, because I loved being audience participation. As an adult,
God.
if you walked up to me, I would cry.
That's so funny, Lillian. I was the exact opposite. And I think maybe because my dad, who was a theater kid and like wanted to do theater all of his life, like whenever like we'd be at like a circus thing or anything, and there one time it was literally like clowns in a magic show, and like, we need a kid from the audience. And I swear to God, my dad lifted me up and like threw me into the air, and he's like, pick my daughter. And I'm like, let me down. I don't want to go up there. And they dragged me up, and I had to be part of this thing, and I was mortified, and I hated it. Maybe that's where I got my stage fright from. That one horrifying experience.
Yeah, that's terrible. My most notable audience participation, I don't even know if you would remember this, but when our high school, when you graduated, they did an all-night grad party where we went to like...
It's like a bowling alley laser tag arcade game place.
Very cool, very fun, cool way to keep kids from doing something stupid on graduation night. And then we all took a bus back to the high school, and they did a show with a hypnotist. And I was one of like 8 people who was hypnotized. And I did pet my classmates. Like I was in a petting zoo.
There you go.
That's what they hypnotized me to do.
So do you remember being up there and doing those things? Or do you just remember people telling you about it afterwards?
I remember parts of it. I very much felt hypnotized. Because one guy was genuinely mad at me because he thought that I was doing it on purpose. And I was like, no, I believed them when they told me that you were all animals.
I think it helps that they are the people that he's working with to manipulate are students who have been up for the last 12 hours and are now being like forced to sit in this ice cold amphitheater. Because I remember I was like, I am freezing right now. And I think they were doing that on purpose too, to like make us like not fall asleep. But I think we were all really tired and stuff. So probably easy to convince someone that they're petting animals and not their classmates.
The tired of it all definitely helped. But yeah, no, I don't remember most of the rest of the show, but I do remember that part specifically because afterwards one of the guys came up to me and was truly mad. And I was like, I don't like, it's not that I remember seeing animals, but I remember thinking you were a cute animal.
What is there to be mad about? I mean, you were just patting him on the head. It's not like you were like doing anything weird to him.
I don't know if you've heard of teenagers, but they get embarrassed and then they get angry about it.
Well, whatever. He has to get over that fact.
I know.
I bet Lillian, I bet he still talks to his therapist about it. And he's like, it's like, you know what? I didn't get that promotion I wanted. And I think it's because that one time Lillian patted me like I was an animal and I can't get past this.
And I don't blame the school and I don't blame the hypnotist. I blame Lillian, which is fair. Speaking of audience participation that isn't me in high school, they did do a lot of fourth wall breaking. What did you think of the fourth wall breaking?
I thought it was pretty good. I like that kind of stuff. There was a lot about this comedy that reminded me of Monty Python, but things like that definitely did. Just, you know, like I can't remember exactly what it was, but there was a point where I literally felt as if it was just like in the Holy Grail, when after Tim the Enchanter does his big speech, King Arthur looks over his shoulder and he's like, what a performance. It's just like, it had a lot of that energy, which I know like British comedy is a genre all within itself. And so I'm sure there's a lot of conversation that goes on between different troupes and groups and sketches and things. But
well, and also, I mean, Monty Python had been around for a while at that point. I can't imagine these people weren't influenced by that.
Oh, surely they were. Yeah. I don't think it's possible not to be. If you're in theater, every single theater kid can recite all of Holy Grail from start to finish.
Yes. Sorry, I was going to do another anecdote, but this has been an anecdote-heavy episode.
But we needed to pad it out. There's not much more to talk about.
There's more to talk about. I'm curious about what your thoughts are on the moments that weren't super comedic, on like the parts that were more serious and how they interpreted those.
Yeah, I thought they were good. I thought like Rochester, mostly his actor stood out to me as, you know, delivering his lines very well with a lot of good emphasis in the right places and emotion, and I liked his gravitas, and I thought Jane did good. I really did enjoy the sort of addressing the audience summary moments when they're doing kind of like skipping over big chunks. So like when she, talked about how it was at Lowood before she went to Thornfield. And I especially loved the moment after she runs away from the wedding and they have this scene with her and two of the other male actors behind her. And she's kind of just describing what was happening on the moors before she was found by St. John. And they're there kind of using their bodies as like the set and the scenery around her. And that was great too, because they had a lot of cute little jokes. She talked about a carriage coming, and then like the guy who plays Rochester comes up with this itty bitty little carriage, and he just goes ee-oo, 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 and just like moves it around. And it was just silly little things like that. But none of that falls really into the seriousness of it. But I thought all of the line. The facts that they were taken straight from the novel, as a person who now knows this very well, it was fun to hear them and be like, ooh, yeah, I know all this. Yeah, I liked it.
Yeah, I also really enjoyed the moments where they went from, like, I think we talked a lot about, like, they took these serious moments and added in comedy elements, but I also really enjoyed when they were in a very comedic moment and they could have just left it on the laugh and moved on from there, but they leaned back into the seriousness of the moment. Like, I really believed they were telling the story of Jane Eyre, and they just were also making us laugh about it. Like, for example, after the fire, when they're having that moment and he's holding her hand and she tries to leave, and they play that really big where it's like, he says, you can go. And she like tries to drag her hand away and is essentially dragging him across the room as he won't let go of her. And she turns back to him, and they, instead of continuing to be really humorous with that, they let that become a serious moment where the two of them are like having that romantic space.
Well, it was sort of serious, but it was also kind of funny because when he pulls her back, like they get like kind of closer and closer. And then she has a moment where she looks at the audience and she makes this like, oh my God, kind of face to be like, I'm getting so close to my boss right now. So they had like a nice balance of all that stuff.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what I'm thinking of there. And then the proposal scene was so funny. That monologue that Jane gives, turning that into a comedic monologue was so well done, because they did her lines, but she's like, instead of just like having this moment and trying to keep herself together and crying and all this stuff like we've seen in so many adaptations, she just fully throws herself on the ground, like drags herself down his body, pulls his pants down a little bit, and he has to keep pulling them back up.
Well, that was the thing, is that it was both that she's like accidentally pantsing him, but she's also like kind of running her hands like over his crotch, and he's like, whoa, okay, Jane, hang on. And it's like all of this stuff. It's really good.
It was so well done. And then Rochester, like same thing, like they did such a good job of like actually delivering those monologues, like the actual words from the book, but in a way that was really humorous. Same thing with St. John. When she's with St. John gives all of his speeches with a lot of sincerity, and Jane's, because I didn't even think about it, but like St. John also comments on Jane's reaction instead of it being a description of Jane's reaction. And they played that same moment there with him where he said, like, I can't remember exactly what it said, but like, you seemed more shocked by this than all the other news that I've given you. And they did a really good job of that as well.
Yeah. No, overall, I think it was a lovely balance of the paying homage and like actually delivering the lines as they should be delivered, but then, sprinkling in all of this very fun, just like shenanigans on the side. So no, I liked it a whole lot. I thought it was great.
One random other note before we do our ratings on just the actual recording of it that we watched. There was a child with a very serious cough.
God, that was bothering me a lot at the end.
And it was bothering me at a lot of different points, but particularly it felt so pre-COVID to me, because I'm like, I don't know if this is bothering me so much because it would always bother me this much, or if it's because I'm so like coughing puts me like that specifically, not like, it wasn't like she was like choking on something. She was sick and she was at this play anyway.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine doing that now.
It was that repetitive child cough where they're just sitting there with their mouths agape, just going for like 20 minutes. And it's like, oh my God, take that child outside.
Oh, so
but there
gross.
was a moment around there when she was doing all of her coughing that the actor who played Sinjin, he like, I think legitimately sneezed. And then like Jane Eyre actress like says, bless you. And he kind of goes, thanks, sorry. I keep going. I think similar to how some of the funniest SNL sketches are the ones where the actors like break character and start laughing at the comedy themselves. There were a few moments like that in this show where the actors kind of like were just, giggling about things. And I loved that. It's always fun to see.
Yeah, it was super fun. It's just like the Lady Ingram thing where she's playing with her wig, and like I feel like that actress did a really good job of like leaning into the comedy of it. And she was very much the one breaking the fourth wall the most, where she did a lot of like the Office style look to the camera sort of things. So I really enjoyed that as well. But
another thing that this made me think of, because you saw Game of Thrones all the way through, right?
Yes, I watched the last season with you.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Just making sure. So I think it is like last season or second to last season where we have this comedy troupe that is like in one of the foreign areas, and they're like acting out the events and the drama of Westeros. And it felt a lot like that because they're talking about these actual historic things of like these rivalries between these houses and who's killing who, but they're inserting all of this like fart humor and like everyone's banging everybody and like all this other kind of like crude comedy stuff. Not that this play was crude at all, but it made me think about that a whole lot. And I'm like, oh, it's funny. I don't know. Just another thought to share.
Nice. I love that. No, I think I see that for sure. What is your rating?
I'm going to give this 7 out of 10 stuffed animal. No, 7 out of 10 Muppets.
Okay.
In honor of Adele.
I was pretty sure you were going to choose puppets, so I did stuffed animal dogs, and I was going to be pissed if you did it the other way.
See, I saved it last minute.
Okay, so we've previously, when we're talking about things that are trying to be a comedy, like a skit and stuff, talked about a comedy scale. If I'm talking about a comedy scale, this is a 10 out of 10. They nailed it. They did so good. Nice. They told the story of Jane Eyre. They found the humor of it, and they respected that a lot. I also don't feel like it's really fair to give it a score based off of like
other productions.
So instead, I'm really just going with like, how well did they do what they were trying to do? Like, did they tell the story of Jane Eyre? Did they make me laugh? Did I enjoy it? And did they balance the sincerity of the theater with the comedy really well? I think it's an 8 out of 10, if that's what I'm doing it on.
Awesome.
Huge fan of this production now. They do tours all over the UK, still doing them. I think they're actively doing Much Ado About Nothing, which I would love to see this troupe do. So very worth checking out if you're in the UK. Maybe when we make it there eventually, and see our listener who lives in the town that the Brontes live in. Super cool. We're going to visit you and have tea together, I think. That makes sense. It will take us a while to get there, but once we do. Yeah, big fan.
One thing that I want to chat through real quick. So, because you've seen some Muppet movies, right? But you're not like a huge Muppet fan?
Not since I was a kid, but yes, I have seen Muppet movies.
Okay. I want us to real quick, let's do a quick Muppet fan cast of Jane Eyre, because I think one of the best things that the Muppets have done is when they take classic literature and they adapt it. So I think personally, some of the two best of all time Muppet movies are Muppet Treasure Island, easily number one for me personally, and then also A Muppet Christmas Carol. And so while we have human actors like mixed in with the Muppet cast, there's almost always like there's one chief, like this is the big celebrity human actor, and then surrounded by the Muppet characters. So I want you, maybe if you're not ready, think about it. Think about who you want to be the human in this mix and which character they're going to play. Because
a human is Jane.
Okay. Okay, cool.
Because I think Miss Piggy has to be Blanche.
Yes, that's so true. Miss Piggy does have to be Blanche. So then Jane, okay, the question is Jane then falling in love with Kermit the Frog as Rochester? Because Kermit is so sweet, I don't think he could lock someone in an attic.
Rochester.
So maybe for this cast, we could actually have 2 human leads as Rochester and Jane, and then everyone else is Muppet characters.
Maybe. I think that works. Yeah, because I don't think a Muppet could play Rochester. Yeah. But I do think a Muppet could kill it as every other character.
Every other character,
An Aunt
exactly.
Reed, a broccoli. Are you kidding me? What's the name? What's that, like, he's a bird, but he's got...
Oh, Gonzo? The one with the bent nose and the little feathers on his head?
The one with he's like some sort of eagle situation. And
yeah, Sam the Eagle. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I was like, it can't just be something eagle. That would be insane.
It's Sam the Eagle. He's pretty strict, so he could be Brocklehurst.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think definitely you're right. Miss Piggy has to be Blanche. Kermit could be St. John. Or he could be Miss Fairfax. He could be like Mr. Fairfax. It's just sweet little Kermit, because he's like, oh well, sure, I don't know. This is Thornfield. Yeah, it's nice.
Incredible.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yay.
Yeah. Send us your what is it? Oh my God. I just
recommendations.
Muppet.
Yeah, Muppet.
Send us your Muppet casting for Jane Eyre. Eventually one of our ideas has to be produced.
Yeah. Animal is definitely Bertha. He's up there drumming. And so instead, when Jane is walking around the house, she doesn't hear weird laughter. She hears drumming coming from the attic. And she's like, what's up with that? And it's like, that's Grace Poole. She likes to drum now and then. Don't worry about it. And then later it's Animal.
Incredible.
If Miss Piggy is Blanche, then if we're getting a flashback episode, then the female Muppet from Dr. Teeth and Electric Mayhem, she's got to be Celine.
Okay. I don't know the Muppets as well as you do.
This is
you're gonna have to make these into Instagram posts for me, because I'm not tracking all of this.
All right, I'll give it a rest. I think Rizzo has to be Adele. He's just a little rat.
I love it. I love all of what you're doing. What you're doing is a 10 out of 10. I need it visually and I need it for social.
Yay.
So
I'll pull in Sam. This is what he and I do best, is we are constantly, in fact, we have plans for a podcast eventually that'll just be us fan casting movies.
Incredible.
And we're going to have a Muppet segment where we'll always be like, okay, so who are the Muppets playing in this film? So I'll get him in and we will work on this together for you.
Perfect. I love that.
Yeah.
Send me all the visuals. They'll end up. And if you guys want to record you guys doing that and Muppet casting it, we'll
that
put
could be
it
a
on
special
our Patreon.
for Patreon. Amazing. I just dropped my pencil. I'm so excited.
Because you've been holding it the whole episode. Swinging it around.
I felt the need to have something to play with, and I need a fidget spinner, and I had a pencil. Nice. So,
well, Piper, your birthday is coming up.
Yes, it is.
And obviously, you and I are doing several special things for it.
Mm-hmm.
But is there one big special thing that our podcast listeners need to know about right now before we talk about what we're doing next week?
Absolutely. We have another palate cleanser episode coming up. And
meow, meow.
Woo! And similar as for Lillian's birthday, she got to pick all 4 options that you all get to vote on. And so for the palate cleanser for my birthday, I picked 4 options. And when we started this call, I had 3 that I was like, for sure I know about these guys. And then I was like, I kind of have a 4th one, but I feel iffy about it. As we were talking, I thought of what my 4th one is, and I'm so excited.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, are you ready for P. Cleavy's list of opportunities?
I'm so ready.
Okay. So, number 1 is the Count of Monte Cristo.
That's classic.
Duh. If we go,
I don't think I've seen it.
Oh my God. Everyone, you have to vote for Count of Monte Cristo because Lillian needs to see it because it's so romantic and good and it's one of my favorites. Okay, so that's number 1, Count of Monte Cristo. Number 2, Finding Neverland, which, okay, there's a romance plot in that. It's not all about the romance. It's mostly about J.M. Barrie, the man who wrote Peter Pan and the family that inspired this beautiful story. It's so magical and wonderful, and I find this movie incredibly inspiring. Sam will say that he thinks it's a depressing, sad movie. Wrong. It's magical. It's a magical love story about imagination.
I will cry during our episode about it.
Yay.
100%.
Okay. So if you want to make Lillian cry, vote for Finding Neverland. The third option is kind of a more modern story, but the plot is so like tangential to things that we talk about in Jane Eyre that I would love to discuss it. Bridges of Madison County.
We've talked about this.
I know. This is
the Bridgerton season 2 of it.
I know, because like this is one I've tried to get Lillian to watch before, and she's like, it's gonna make me sad. I'm like, but it's a beautiful sadness.
I will watch this for your birthday if our audience votes for it, and only if our audience votes for it.
And then the last one that I thought on the fly. So I did show this to Lillian long ago. You'll probably have to come over and watch it with me because it's not easy to find. But there was a collection of video movies that BBC did called Shakespeare Retold. And the one that I would want us to watch is The Taming of the Shrew, because it has Rufus Sewell in it, who's one of my biggest crushes. And his portrayal of Petruchio is absolutely amazing. It literally has a man who does drag on his wedding day. It's so good.
Incredible.
So if you want to hear us talk about Taming of the Shrew, vote for that one. Otherwise, we have Bridges of Madison County. It will make Lillian cry, but it'll be a beautiful discussion. Finding Neverland will both be crying, but they'll be happy tears, inspiring. And then Count of Monte Cristo.
Both happy and sad.
Yeah.
I kind of want to watch Count of Monte Cristo, so I sort of hope that one wins, but I would be down to watch any of them.
Awesome. I know for a fact that Layla, who was on here, she loves the Count of Monte Cristo, so I'm sure I know that's what she's voting for. Hi, Layla.
Hi, Layla.
Oh, also, hi, Katie, our Jane patron.
Hey!
Woo, 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 woo.
Speaking of Katie, our currently only Jane, pinnacle of a human being. The voting for this, if you're a patron, your vote counts for 5 times as much as a regular vote on a different channel through Patreon. It'll be open on Patreon for the whole week. But on our other channels, usually I do it on like Tuesday or Wednesday. It's up for 24 hours. You can vote on every single channel. So if you want to vote on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, you can vote on. We are getting closer and closer to 100 YouTube subscribers, and I would love to cross that line.
Ooh.
But you can vote on all of those channels. Plus, if you're a patron, you get those 5. So if you feel very strongly about one of these, you could absolutely swing the vote just by going everywhere, following us everywhere, and voting everywhere.
Hooray! And I can't wait to see, because I love all of these and I have so much to say about all of them.
Yay.
So decide what we're going to talk about.
But what are we doing next week, Piper?
Well, on Thursday at about 11 p.m. at night, we're hopping on an airplane.
We hop on the plane at about 9.
Okay. Well, at least we have that going for us. I thought you said it got pushed back. I thought you said we're like boarding
back to 9, I thought. Whatever. I'll check. We'll check before we go to the airport.
Okay, because I literally picked our hotel with the idea that we'd be arriving like around midnight, and I wanted a bar that would be open because
I think we arrive at midnight. I think we get on the plane at 9.
Okay, well, we're flying to Arizona, and we are going to go see our very first in-person live production of Jane Eyre, and this one is the Broadway musical version. They just released a trailer for their production that we got to see. I'm so excited. So we're going to go there. We're going to see that show. If you are in Arizona, Lillian, can you put the school name in the chat again? This is a theater company.
Yes.
And I think of the two of us,
vamping,
I might be the best one to pronounce it. We'll also put info about this with on our social and in the description of the episode. Because we're going to see it Friday night.
Yes.
Yeah. It's the Yavape College of Performing Arts.
And it's the Performing Arts Center in this. So it's like it's through the school, but it's also its own performing arts thing. It's very cool. We absolutely appreciate them reaching out to us and having tickets for us. All we had to do was fly across the country.
Land at midnight, pray if the bar is open to celebrate.
We land at 11:15. We take off at 9.
Okay. That's not as bad as I thought.
And then we leave Saturday at 6 a.m. because it was literally $200 less than any other flight. So we're having a cool weekend where we are literally just flying to Arizona to see Jane Eyre the musical because we love it and we love you, our lovely listeners.
Exactly. So join us for that. It's going to be a blast. And otherwise, if you can't be there in person, then we'll all talk about it together on the next episode.
It'll be great. We cannot wait. And anybody who is like a really intense fan of this, the way that I am a planner for this, you might be going, but Lillian, you've done 5 episodes about Jane Eyre, and then you do a palate cleanser, so your schedule is going to be off. Yeah, sorry, the play was when it was. That's not my fault. We're gonna make up for it. We're doing 6 Jane episodes, a palate cleanser, and then we'll do 4 Jane episodes and a palate cleanser. Ooh. So hold on to your ass holes because this is gonna be different.
Hold on to the hole itself. The cheeks are fine.
The cheeks are gonna be fine. That's too R-rated. We might need to get that out.
Oh my god. You can tell us your feelings on Lillian's choice of words here by reaching out to us on social at airbuds. You can send us an email about how to talk about butts, airbuds@gmail.com. Write us a 5-star review. Tell me your favorite song about butts. I like Sir Mix-a-Lot. I like big butts and I cannot lie. Donate to our Patreon. Maybe I'll record the whole thing because I do have it memorized.
Oh my god, yes. How many patrons do we need to get for you to do that?
We need one more Jane patron.
Oh my god, you guys. One of you listening right now, you could be a current patron and just upgrade to Jane.
I will do Sir Mix-a-Lot's Baby Got Back.
We'll dedicate it to you. Please.
Oh, Bertha Got Back.
Bertha got back!
If you need a reason to give us $15.
I've never been more excited about a piece of art in my life. Please, you guys. I'm begging you on my knees. Please.
We're gonna sign off with this note. We love you guys so much. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next time. Happy Jane Eyre reading, watching, clowning. Bye.
Bye.